Hi, I'm Daniel Likis, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's an Emmy nominated producer and award winning television writer producer. And he's offering his debut novel, Long Runs, no other than Mr. Dan Ramm.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Dan, and can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Dan Ramm. I'm originally from Kansas City, Missouri. Moved to Los Angeles in the mid-'80s, and that's where the story gets interesting. I guess I'll tell that in a minute, but I'm a writer, producer, written a lot of television Criminal Minds. I've written for Criminal Minds. I've written for shows I've created myself, shows I haven't created, just been doing that for a long time now.
Yes, congratulations, and thank you for sharing your talents to the world. So, what's inspired you to become an author?
It's kind of a mistake, actually. So I had been doing writing for television for a long time, 15 years at least. And then I had an opportunity, one network that I'd done a lot of work with in the past. They approached Joe Montaigne, my producing partner, and I, and they asked me to come up with 3 ideas for a scripted drama. They had never done a scripted drama on their network before, and they wanted to sort of dip their toe in that water. And so we came up with 3 ideas, and the one idea that they liked most, they picked, and we wrote a script for that. And so far, nothing has happened with that, which isn't too uncommon. But the idea that I personally liked the best was the story that ended up becoming the book Long Branch. So this is towards the end of COVID, so like around mid to the end of 2022. Not a lot of production happening. I had a little extra time on my hands, so I started to work on this idea as a book rather than a script. Then, shortly after that, of course, we had the writer's strike that lasted for several months. So there was a lot of time, available time there too. So I just kept working on it, and I didn't tell anybody I was writing it mostly because I didn't want to be embarrassed. You brag to your friends and you tell everybody like, I'm writing a novel, and everybody gets excited. Then you get to page 50 and you're like, I don't know what to write next. And then you have to tell everybody, I changed my mind. I'm not writing a novel, and I didn't want to have to do that. And also, I'm a firm believer in only sharing your goals and dreams with people are on your side, because not everybody is on your side. Whether they're your friends or not, they're not necessarily on your side. I know that might sound strange, but it's true. So I play things a little close to the vest when it comes to that. And so I worked on this book over the course of almost a year and a half. When I finished it, of course, I had my wife read it. I had a few friends read it. I had Joe read it. Everybody really responded so positively that I thought, wow, I should do something with this. So then I hired an editor named Cara Highsmith, who was really wonderful. And because I didn't really know formatting. I mean, I know how to write, but novel formatting is so different than screenplay or TV script formatting. So I sent it to her. She sort of guided me on formatting, but her response was very positive too. She said, I know I've worked with a lot of people who have tried to bridge that gap from writing for television or film to novels, and they usually have a struggle doing it, but you seem to have done it very well. So it's just been, and now it's out, and people are really, really responding so positively. I mean, the reviews I'm getting are fantastic, and I get 2 things. The first thing people tell me is, "Wow, it was a very easy read. I didn't feel like I had to. I just kind of let it happen as I was reading it, so it was a good summer read." And the other thing is, everyone tells me they never, in a million years, could figure out what was happening next. Every time they thought they knew what was happening, they realize that's not what's happening. So I guess that's a good mystery novel.
For sure. Easy to read. So how do you develop the characters and plot lines of Long Branch or
Well,
Long Branch?
the main character, he's sort of a combination of a lot of friends. So as you can imagine, when you work in the business that I do for so long, you make a lot of friends, and you make a lot of actor friends, and some very famous, some not famous at all, and kind of everything in between. So the main character, Mason Powell, is sort of a combination of a lot of different actor friends that I know. One thing about Hollywood, it's a very calloused business in that you can easily get typecast. You can easily get sort of pigeonholed as that one thing. So I always use the example of Bob Denver, who played Gilligan on Gilligan's Island. He was so identified as that character that after that show ended, he struggled really hard to try to find his next sort of thing, because every time they saw him, all they could think of was Gilligan from Gilligan's Island, and that happens a lot in this business. So Mason Powell is a victim of that same problem. So he had a very successful show for 10-12 years on a major network where he played the sheriff in an Old West town. The show ended, and he never really parlayed that into anything else. And he starts doing fan shows as a way to make money, and those can be very lucrative for somebody like that. But then obviously then COVID hits, so all that stuff stops for almost 2 years. When it restarts, he finds himself in a situation where it's just not quite as lucrative as it was before. People have changed, their lifestyles have changed, their everything's changed. People at that point, people are still leery of going into big crowds, so the turnout is just not what it used to be. So for reasons I don't want to disclose at the moment, he finds himself in a very difficult financial situation. So his solution is to go back to his hometown of Long Branch, Georgia. He has a way to make a lot of money there fairly quickly, come back to Los Angeles, and try to reboot his career again. But while in this hometown, he sort of stumbles upon a mystery that's 30 years old, and he himself actually might have been involved in it unknowingly. And so the more questions he asks, the more tangled it gets, the more in danger his life becomes at different points. And that's about all I could tell you without ruining what happens. But I can almost guarantee you'll never see it coming, what's really going on.
For sure. So what challenges have you faced in writing Long Branch?
It's funny you asked that question, because one of my things when I write anything, a script, or certainly now a book, I have a policy that I don't stop writing for the day or for the hour or whatever I'm doing. I don't stop until I know what I'm going to write next. Because I feel like if I know what I'm going to write next, I'm excited to get back to the typewriter or keyboard and continue. If I don't know in my mind, like, okay, this is what has to happen next in this story, then I know myself, and I start to procrastinate about getting back to it because I don't know what I'm going to write next. So I think that has saved me many times. I mean, there have been times when I've been writing and I find myself struggling, but I just keep persisting until, okay, I know what I got to do next. That's when I stop.
Very well said, Mr. Dan. Because of that, we're gonna give you a big hand.
Oh.
Very well said. So, do you have a writer's block when you're writing Long Branch?
I didn't, and I've never really struggled with writer's block. I find that whenever I start to wonder, like I wonder what should happen, or I don't know quite how this story starts to play, one of the best things that I do, I just go out into the world and listen to people's conversations at the bank or at the restaurant or standing in line at the grocery store, because life is inspiring, and there's no greater story than the truth of what really happens to people in the world. So that's generally where I sort of get inspiration. I'll see something, or maybe I'll read an article about something, or I'll hear a news story and I'll think, oh, that would be interesting if that happened to the guy, you know.
Mm, yes, interesting. So, what authors or books have influenced in writing long runs?
I'm a big Robert Parker fan. The Spencer novels, I really enjoy. One of the things I like about Spencer novels is the dialogue, and that you'll find is very prevalent in Long Branch. There's a lot of dialogue because I write scripts, so dialogue is important to me, and I think that's a way that you have a better understanding of who the character is rather than through a description of the character. It's through the things that they say and their actions. So, I'm a big Robert Parker fan. I'm a I'm a big Ian Fleming fan. James Bond novels. Also, there was a writer named Stephen Cannell who was also a television writer and wrote novels. He wrote a book once called Hollywood Tough that I just thought was wonderful. So those are sort of my influences. Stephen, I just blanked on his last name. He wrote the movie, the sniper movie about Stephen. I can't think of his last name off the top of my head. I'll think of it.
Yes, but before we go on, Mr. Dan, I want to shout out my ranking tops for the last 30 days because in Mexico, I got 41 on the Apple chart, New Zealand, Thailand, Tanzania, Moldova, United Kingdom, Poland, Egypt, and Norway. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers, authors all over the world, like Mr. Dan Ramm. So, Mr. Dan, how do you approach research for long branch?
Well, it like I said in the beginning, it started out as a television show. So I was very familiar with the story. It was an idea I had had for a while, and I'd sort of been working on it little by little over the course of a few years. Actually, I'd even written an earlier script, screenplay draft for a pilot for a TV show of this story, not exactly, but sort of based on it a little bit. Um, so once I got into the book itself, um, I kind of knew what I wanted to say. I knew what the story was. I just wanted to tell it from a different way than I had done in the past. So the main character, Mason Powell, was not the original main character, but I liked the idea that I liked that sort of fish out of water sort of experience where you put somebody in a situation or an environment that they're not really comfortable with or familiar with. And although Mason is from this town, he moved away when he was 18. And so he spent most of his life in Los Angeles, a very different place than Long Branch. So when he goes back there, yes, there are things about it that are familiar to him, but there's also a lot about it that he's sort of not familiar with, sort of a bit of a culture shock for him. And Mason is, I guess, a little bit based on me. I moved from Kansas City, a small town, to Los Angeles when I was 18, and originally was in a completely different field, and then got into writing in the early 2000s. And so I guess there's a little touch of Mason Powell, a little touch of me and Mason Powell as well.
Yes, for sure. So, can you share a memorable moment from your from writing long runs?
I think one memorable moment for me was when I had my wife read it for the first time. There are some emotional parts in it. There's mystery, there's some humor, there's a little bit of love, but there's also some emotional parts. And I remember she was on the couch reading the book, and I knew she was getting close to this first emotional moment, not for but a big emotional moment. And I looked over and I saw her crying, and I knew I had done it. I knew I connected with her. And when I talk to people who have read it and I ask them about that part, they all are very emotional about that part. So I think that was a a validation, like, okay, you did it. You got somebody to cry.
Something to cry on. So, how do you balance your writing career when you're writing long runs?
I try to dedicate a certain amount of time to it. I try to write. When I was working on it, I tried to do a little bit every day. Usually, at the end of my regular day, I would spend an hour, maybe, just just working on it a little bit. And I think too, I at that point, my goal was just to finish it. Like, I didn't know it was going to be a success. I didn't know people were going to really like it. I didn't even know if I was going to get it published. I just knew it was something I wanted to finish, you know. Uh, and so I took a little bit of time every day, and I just worked on it a little bit until it was completed. And then here we are.
This is the product, and let's give a cheering squad for a long run. Thank you for sharing to the world. So, Mr. Dan, what will be your advice for those aspiring writers out there?
I think you shouldn't be afraid to try. You know, if you don't try, you're guaranteed failure. You know, you have to at least give it a try, um, and you have to step a little bit outside your comfort zone. I mean, writing a novel was not something 3 years ago that I ever saw on my radar. I was writing lots of television, and wasn't anything I was thinking about. And then this opportunity for me came up to write it, and I thought, well, why not? It's not going to hurt anything if I go for it. And you go through those self doubts, like, is this any good? Are people going to read it and think, what, this is silly or whatever? But you got to just give it a shot, because there's no shame in failure as long as you give it a good try.
Yes, give a shot. Stop
Yeah.
procrastinating, people.
Yes, exactly.
Go for it. If you have the passion of writing, go
Exactly.
for it. Write and write and write. So,
Yeah.
what are the some themes or topics that you are passionate about exploring in your writing?
Oh, let's see. I'm just passionate about a good story. I just, I can, when I read a good story. I mean, a long time ago, when I first began to work with Joe, Joe Montaigne, one of the first things he had me do was read scripts for him. As you can imagine, a guy like that gets a lot of scripts in the mail at that time, still does. And he would hand me a stack of 5, 6, 7 scripts and say, read all these scripts and tell me if any of them are any good. That was also a big learning thing for me too, to read all these different scripts by different writers, different genres, different styles, and all told from different viewpoints. And so I think over the years of reading a lot of scripts, I really got to learn what makes a good story. A lot of scripts would start out really great, super exciting, interesting, a lot of action, but then they would sort of fade as the script went on. And then by the time you got to the end, most of the time I found myself disappointed in the end, because I thought, wow, you started out so good, and then you ended up here. So I think that was an education for me, learning that you better have a good ending in mind before you start, because if you don't know where you're going, how do you get there? You know. So that was a big thing, and I think that it made me also passionate about good stories. I was always enjoyed writing. I wrote as a kid in school, and I had a couple things published in local newspapers, nothing big, but I always enjoyed writing, and I always enjoyed storytelling, and so I think that a good story trumps everything.
For sure. A good story will become a series, a motion picture. So, how do you handle feedback or criticism of your work?
Well, I think some advice Joe gave me early on in my writing career is, he said, you have to have conviction, and you have to believe in yourself. because again, Hollywood is a very callous business, and the arts in general is a very subjective business. What you find funny, I may not, or what you find dramatic, I may not. So you're relying on your own instincts to what you think is funny or dramatic or good or romantic, and you're hoping that that connects with at least more people than it doesn't. So, and I think you just have to believe in yourself, because if you don't really believe in yourself, then how do you expect anyone else to believe in you? So I think that's the biggest thing I would say.
Definitely. So Long Branch will be a trilogy, series, or a quartet?
That's a good question. So when I finished the book, I had more to say, and I thought I have to stop because now it's over 300 pages, and I don't want to turn this into some book so big that nobody wants to pick it up. So I've actually started writing the second book. Depending on how that goes, it could turn into a series like Robert Parker did with Spencer. I don't know. I guess it depends on how people respond to the second book as well.
Looking forward to that series, Mr. Dan. And what are some of your goals and aspirations as a writer?
Just to entertain people. I think that if I can, if people buy the book, so far this has been what's happening, and it's thrilling for me to where somebody gets excited about it when they talk to me, or when they leave a review. They're excited to tell me how much they enjoy it, how fooled they were. I had a guy, Robert Jerome, this man I know. He called me up and he said, I can't believe how good this book was. He said, I love mystery novels. And he goes, and I have this thing that I do when I read a mystery novel, when I think I've got it figured out, I write down on a piece of paper what I think is going on, and I write the date. He goes, I've torn up 4 pieces of paper reading your book because I'm wrong every time. And then when he got to the end, he said, I never saw it coming. I never could figure out what was going on. Every time I thought I knew what was happening. So when you get that kind of feedback, you're like, wow, this is great. People are enjoying it. People, for me, it's no different than if I was a painter and I painted a painting and people loved it and people stood and wept in front of it, I guess. I don't know. It's a good feeling.
That's a good feeling. Oh, thank you, Miss Rebecca, for watching us right now. I hope you will be my feature author of the month of September, if you say agreed. Thank you, Miss Rebecca. And Mr. Dan, how do you think publishing industry is changing, and what does that mean for authors?
Well, I think it's changing in a big way because of the internet, mostly because of the ability, just like every other industry, music, filmmaking, and writing, it's all changed because people now have the ability to create their art and put it out there themselves in their own way. So I had an opportunity to have a publishing agent sell the book for me. And I turned it down because as he explained to me, it could be up to 2 years before the publisher would actually publish it. And the reason why is because big publishing houses, Random House, Penguin, all these big companies, they've already got their kind of stable of authors, big authors that they push.
Yes.
They're going to stagger their releases. They're not going to put out my mystery novel at the same time as, some big author's mystery novel, because they don't want a competition with that. And I don't want to compete against that, frankly. So, and it's very much like the film business and television business. Like if you make yourself a sweet little independent film for $3-4 million and you want to release it, you're better off trying to get it released independently than go to a big major studio, because they may put it on a shelf and let it sit for years before they decide to put it out. And then they may not even try to promote it. So I think that for people who want to do their own art, whether it's music, writing, even filmmaking, if you have the capabilities of doing it yourself and putting it out there yourself, it's you're going to be more satisfied. It's going to be more gratifying for you because you're in control of it now. You're in control of how you sell it, how you market it, who you sell it to. You know, if you want to spend some money on advertising, go ahead. I mean, I've spent some money on social media advertising, and it's paid off pretty well. There's a lot of ways these days to put your product to market.
Yes, for sure. So long runs, is it good for a series or a motion picture?
More for a series, I think. I think the first book would be a complete first season of a series. And then the second book could be obviously the second season. But if somebody wanted to make a movie, I wouldn't say no.
For sure. So how do you approach writing for different genres or audiences?
Well, I sort of have my genres, you know, like I would never try to, I don't think I would ever try to write a romance novel or a science fiction novel. Those aren't the kind of books that I necessarily enjoy. I like action, I like mystery. So those would be the things that I would sort of gravitate towards, and the things that I write for television are in that same genre too.
Hmm. Okay, is it
As they
pressure?
say,
Yes.
write what you know.
Right, what you know.
Yeah.
For sure. Is it pressure, Mr. Dan, that you have a lot of accolades when you're creating something?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's part of you that doesn't want to disappoint people. Like, you know, we always want to succeed in what we do, and although I've certainly had my failures in the past, you know, there you don't want to fail. You want people to respond positively. I don't know that awards and things like that make it any more intense or amplify that at all. I think you just want to succeed because you want to succeed, you know. If I didn't have any awards at all, I'd still want to succeed.
Yes, for sure. What is something you wish you had known when you are first starting writing?
I wish, that's a great question. I wish I would have been a little bit smarter about the industry itself, about how the business part of it works, because there have been a few incidences where I've made sort of contractual errors that have, I don't want to, it's not that anybody screwed me, but it's just that I felt like, man, if I would have worded that a little differently, I could have had. So I'll give you an example. Uh, Once upon a time, I wrote a script for a network, for a pilot for a TV show. And they paid me for it, so it happened. But but in my contract, what I should have had, and I just didn't know at the time, I should have had a thing of it coming back to me after a certain point, that a clause that said, if you don't produce this into a show it within 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever time period, that then the rights and ownership revert back to the writer, to me. And I didn't do that. And unfortunately that script, I don't own it. I can't get it back, and nothing will probably ever happen with it. And that's too bad because it was pretty good. You know, I thought it was pretty good. My agent, my departed agent now, he passed away a few years ago. He loved it. He just loved that script and thought that we could for sure sell it to somebody else if this network didn't do anything with it. So those kinds of things, I wish I was a little smarter back in those days about contracts and, you know, a little more administrative information.
Yes, for sure. But before we go on, Mr. Dan, I please purchase one of my bestsellers audiobooks, Stand Tall, Stand Together, Breaking the Chains of Bullying. And of course, my Book 101 Review, Volume 3. These all my 100 episodes of my first season, people. And of course, my climate change book, Earth Fever, Unliving Climate, and Our Restore Our Balance. And Book 101 Review Volume 2, as I said, these are my products of my 100 episodes of my Book 101 review first season and Book 101 review volume 1 highly recommended, and one of my self-help book, Threads of Existence, weaving the tapestry of life. And life is too short, a journey of discovery, fulfillment, and joy. Please do support them and please purchase them on Audible. So, Mr. Dan,
Yes,
how
sir.
how do you hope your books or your series will be remembered or appreciated by future generations?
Well, I guess I just hope that people continue to enjoy it and find escape. You know, life is, especially right now, life is a little unpredictable. It's a little tough. This book is a definite escape from the world we live in at the moment. And it's a way for people to just sort of not think, you know, like there's certain television shows, like game shows or things like that, that I enjoy watching because I don't have to think. I can just relax. I can enjoy myself. I can laugh, and I don't think about what's happening in my life or in the world or in the news or in politics, certainly. And I think that this book is the same thing. I think people will enjoy the read immensely. They can get it in paperback. They can get it in the Kindle version. I'm sure we'll have an audio version at some point, but it's a nice escape.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Dan Ramm, because if you support him, more TV shows coming, more series of books coming, and who knows, we will be directing soon for a series or a movie. So, Mr. Dan, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon. You are most welcome to come back, Mr.